This video brought to you by FireBreathingAlligator.com. The best long reach match. You get twice the value, sometimes three times the value of the competition. It's an alligator clip. You just put your small stick in there and light it up. And you can get 3 or 4 lights per stick. Works really well. You can light campfire, you can light cook stove, pilot light, works good for a pilot light. You can, like I said, you can get 3 or 4 lights per stick. And there's your pilot light. You stick it right in there and there it is, all lit up. You get 75 small sticks to light. I usually put 80 in there. Usually get 80 at least. You get a lighter. You get the fire-breathing alligator. And you also get a resealable pouch. This has a resealable. This is a resealable pouch. You put everything right back in there. And FireBreathingAlligator.com. You can get it on eBay. If it's not on eBay, become a distributor and sell it on eBay. There were 2 families in Israel, and both families gave birth to baby boys. One family was a Pharisee family, and the head of that family was Juda Ihariot. The Pharisee family named their newborn baby boy Judah, so he was Juda Ihariot. The other family in Israel at the time was an educated, they could read and write, Judean family by the name of Iscariot. The Iscariot family named their newborn baby boy Judas, so he was Judas Iscariot. The Pharisee family had Juda Ihariot. The Judean family had Judas Iscariot. Various reasons why Judeans did not accept Jmmanuel as the prophet, not the least of which was the illiteracy and no printing presses. A reason today Jews do not accept Jmmanuel as the prophet is this: Judas Iscariot betrayed him. These confused people are divided among themselves, and therefore one betrays the other. So how can the teaching of Jmmanuel be the truth? And they still go along with that, some of them, until the word gets out. Chapter 10, the calling of the disciples. He called his 12 disciples to him and gave them the knowledge to control the unclean spirits, so they could drive them out and heal all sickness and infirmities. The names of the 12 disciples are these: Simon, called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon Cannaeus, and Judas Iscariot, the only one besides Jmmanuel who understood handwriting. Jmmanuel sent out these 12, commanding them and saying, "Do not go into the streets of Israel, and do not go to the scribes and Pharisees, but go to the cities of the Samaritans, and to the ignorant in all parts of the world. Go to the unenlightened, the idol worshippers, and ignorant, after I have left you, because they do not belong to the house of Israel, which will bring death and bloodshed into the world. Go and preach, saying, the laws of nature are the laws of creation, and the power of the human spirit embodies life." Chapter 14, the offense of Judas Iscariot. It happened that Jmmanuel and his disciples went to Bethlehem, where he taught and advised the people. However, Judas Iscariot had become disloyal to the teachings of Jmmanuel and lived only for his desires. Secretly, he was collecting from Jmmanuel's audiences and accumulating gold, silver, and copper in his money bag, so he could live opulently. And it happened that Juda Ihariot, the son of Simeon the Pharisee, informed Jmmanuel of the wrongdoings of Judas Iscariot, since he hoped to be paid for this. But Jmmanuel thanked him and did not pay him with any gifts whatever. So Juda Ihariot thought of revenge, because he was greedy for gold, silver, and copper. But Judas Iscariot was led into the desert by Jmmanuel, where for 3 days and 3 nights he was taught by him the concept of right and wrong. So the disciple repented and forthwith followed the teaching of Jmmanuel. When he returned to the city, he distributed all his possessions and collections among the poor and became a trusted disciple of Jmmanuel. However, at the same time, it happened that the writing in which Judas Iscariot had reported, just remember, Judas Iscariot was the only one besides Jmmanuel who could read and write. The other 11 disciples could not read and write. However, this is a perfect psyops. I mean, you couldn't do better with, the CIA could never do better than this. However, at the same time, it happened that the writing in which Judas Iscariot had reported on the teaching of Jmmanuel were stolen from him. So he told Jmmanuel about it. And he spoke, "Truly, truly, I say, Judas Iscariot, you will have to suffer even greater evils than only the loss of your writings about my teachings and my life. For over 2,000 years you will be wrongly accused of betraying me, because Simeon the Pharisee wants it so. But his son, Juda Ihariot, is the real culprit. Like his father, Simeon Ihariot, he is a Pharisee who is seeking my life. It is he who stole the writings from you and brought them to the scribes and Pharisees, so they can judge me accordingly and put me to death. He received 70 pieces of silver for your writings and will receive another 30 when he makes it possible to deliver me over to the executors. Truly I say to you, he will certainly succeed at that, and for 2,000 years you will innocently have to pay the penalties for that, so you will become a martyr. But write down my teaching and life story one more time, because the time will come in 2,000 years when your writings will be revealed. Until then, my teaching will be falsified and will become an evil sect, for which reason much blood will flow." Next section is chapter 26. Saul, his thoughts full of revenge, joined up with Juda Ihariot, the son of the Pharisee, and discussed how to seize Jmmanuel to turn him over to the authorities. Suicide. When Saul had left, Jmmanuel called his disciples together and said to them, "You know, when Passover comes in 2 days, I shall be turned over to the courts to be crucified, as it is destined, so that I may continue to learn. My traitor will be Juda Ihariot, the son of Simeon the Pharisee, because he is interested only in gold, silver, goods, and chattels. He will betray me for 30 pieces of silver, because he is misled by his father's greed. But his joy in the pieces of silver will not last long, because he is fickle and unstable, and will soon feel guilty. Since Juda Ihariot is without courage, and has little knowledge, he will put his belt around his neck and hang himself from a branch. Truly, truly, I say to you, although Juda Ihariot's suicide appears just, it is unjust. Even though people have free will to demand their rights and govern themselves, they do not have the right to decide over their lives or deaths. The intent of the laws is such that people live their lives to the end, so that they may perfect their spirits in this manner. But if they judge themselves through suicide, they deviate from the law and violate the plan and the laws of creation. Understand that they have no right to decide over their own lives and deaths. They have only the right to determine the kind of life they want to live, but not the right to decide over life and death. The laws say that no event or situation justifies suicide, and this includes suicide carried out by other persons, such as hired murderers or mercy killers. No matter how much guilt people may incur, or how large their burden may be, they have no right to determine their own deaths. Even though Juda Ihariot incurs great guilt, he has no right to decide over his life and death. Any guilt or mistake leads to understanding and the perfection of the Spirit. But if people escape from guilt or mistake by suicide, they flee from understanding and responsibility, and have to learn the same in another life. Thereby, the process of perfection of the consciousness and of the Spirit is delayed, which is not the will of creation. Either way, suicide is an act of deplorable cowardice and a callous disregard of the laws and commandments of creation. Chapter 27, the agitation of the disciples. After Jmmanuel had finished speaking, the disciples were very excited and said, "Why don't we catch Juda Ihariot and stone him so he can't betray you?" Why does he do that? But Jmmanuel was furious and said, "Don't you know the law says, 'You shall not kill in immorality'? And don't you know what I prophesied to you? That I would be crucified in order to attain a certain knowledge? How dare you disregard the destiny of the laws, since this is given and intended? As I go my way, so all people have to go their ways. Truly I say to you, if I were not to follow my destiny, how could I fulfill my mission, which will lead me to India?" Behold, a woman came up to him, who had a glass of precious water, which she poured on his head as he sat at the table. Truly I say to you, wherever my teachings will be preached in all the world, whether falsified or true, people will remember what she has done. Just as she will be remembered for a long time, so a false teaching about which one of you betrayed me will also be remembered. While we are here together, Juda Ihariot, the son of the Pharisee in Jerusalem, is hatching a plot against me as to how he can betray me to the chief priests. While we are gathered here, he is asking the chief priests for the blood money that they offer for my capture. 30 pieces of silver are offered to him if they catch me through his help. While they are forging this plan, they are also hatching the plot against one among you, since they want to present a culprit to the people. Thus Juda Ihariot, the son of the Pharisee, will turn me over to the soldiers, and my disciple Judas Iscariot is supposed to be considered the traitor. So that the people will say, "Behold, these confused people are divided among themselves, and therefore one betrays the other. So how can the teaching of Jmmanuel be the truth?" But since Juda Ihariot, the son of the Pharisee, and my disciple Judas Iscariot have almost identical names, the lie of the chief priests will be accepted from the beginning. Chapter 28, in Gethsemane. When they left the house of Aaron and his wife in Jerusalem, Jmmanuel went with his disciples to a courtyard called Gethsemane, which belonged to a man named Joshua, who thought well of Jmmanuel. In the large garden of the farm, he spoke to his disciples, "Sit down here while I go over there to have a chance to ponder." He took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and started to mourn and think, because he was afraid and alarmed about what would happen to him. And he spoke to them, "Behold, certainly I am wise and have great knowledge, but I am afraid of things to come, both known and unknown. However, this is the nature of a human, even though he is knowing and wise. My mind is grieved to death, therefore stay with me and watch with me, so that I do not feel so lonesome. It is easier to bear a hardship with 1 or 2 other persons than by oneself. If destiny wanted it to, this cup would pass me by, but not my will, but destiny's be done, because this is what has been planned for me." When he spoke this, Judas Iscariot joined them and said, "Listen to what I have to say. Over there things are taking place in the shadow of the city walls, where I just noticed covered lights." Jmmanuel said, "These are probably the henchmen that Juda Ihariot is bringing, because he has secretly followed us here in order to betray me." He walked away, fell on his face, and reflected, saying, If it is possible, may this cup pass me by, not according to my will, but may the law of destiny be fulfilled, so that I will be enlightened in this secret which I must fathom." Returning to his disciples, he found them sleeping, and so he said to Peter, "Can't you watch with me for 1 hour, so I'm not alone in my difficult hour? Be awake and great in spirit and in consciousness that you will not be tempted. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." A second time he walked, fell on his face, and said, "If it isn't possible for this cup to pass me by, I will drink it, so that I may be enlightened in this secret and fulfill for all time my mission in a faraway country." He returned and found the disciples sleeping again, and only Judas Iscariot stayed awake with him. He walked away again, fell on his face a third time, brooded in bitterness, and said, "I am so afraid, even though I know that I have to follow my path which is destined for me. How willing is the spirit, and how weak is the flesh, when it is so frightened of pain." His body trembled, and fine drops of sweaty blood flowed all over him because he was so afraid and anxious. With his face flushed, he came back to his disciples and said to them, "Do you want to sleep or rest now, or do you want to watch with me? Behold, the hour has come that I will be turned over to the hands of the henchmen. So get up and let us go. For behold, the henchmen are coming." The capture. As he was still talking, behold, there came Juda Ihariot, the son of the Pharisee, and with him a great number of chief priests and elders of the people, carrying swords and poles. Juda Ihariot had given them a sign and said, "Behold, I will flatter him and confuse him, as if I repented the sins of my life. And as a sign of false flattery there will be a kiss, and behold, you shall seize whomever I kiss." He then stepped up to Jmmanuel and said, "I greet you, Master. Now I will follow your teaching, since you allow me to repent my old life." Then he touched Jmmanuel and gave him the kiss of treason. But Jmmanuel said to him, "My friend, why have you come to tell me a lie when treason burns in your mind and in your actions?" The henchmen came up to Jmmanuel, put their hands on him, and seized him. And behold, one of the henchmen pondered, had a quick change of mind, and joined Jmmanuel because he felt remorse. He stretched out his hand, pulled out his sword, and hit a servant of a chief priest, cutting off his ear. Then Jmmanuel said to the man, "Put your sword back into its sheath, because those who take a sword without need will perish by the sword. Or do you think that I could not have fled before your group arrived? But how could I fulfill my destiny if I had done so?" And the man turned away, crying, fled, and was never seen again. Then Jmmanuel talked to the henchmen. "You came here with swords and poles in order to capture me as if I were a murderer. It would have been easy for you to capture me in the city. Daily I sat there teaching in the temple, yet you did not seize me. You hypocrites, you must have been afraid of the people, and therefore you come to me like thieves in darkness, to throw me into prison and out of sight of the people, out of the sight of the people. Truly I say to you, darkness will be light, and everyone will talk of your deed, for which you will be denounced for all time to come." Then Simeon the Pharisee stood up and said, "Your sayings are stupid and full of lies. Why should we be afraid of the people? You taught the people falsely, despised our laws and called them lies, and for that you have to suffer. You thought we would not catch you and bring you to trial, but you were mistaken, because one of your followers was not of your persuasion and betrayed you for 30 pieces of silver, and that is Judas Iscariot." Jmmanuel answered, "Truly I say to you, you may succeed for a long time in accusing Judas Iscariot of treason in front of the people, but the truth will come out and be known by all in the whole world. Namely, that my traitor is not Judas Iscariot, but is your son, Juda Ihariot, who bears the name of his father, the Pharisee." Simeon the Pharisee was furious, stepped up and hit Jmmanuel in the face with his fist, because he was afraid of his true words. When this happened, the disciples, full of fear and discouraged, abandoned Jmmanuel and fled. Those who had seized Jmmanuel took him to the high priest Caiaphas, where the scribes, Pharisees, and elders of the people had gathered to pass sentence on him. Jmmanuel before the highest council. The chief priests and the high counselors were looking for false testimony against Jmmanuel so that they could kill him. Even though many false and bribed witnesses appeared, they could not find any false testimony. Emmanuel speaking. If you consider God as creation, you are mistaken and violating the truth. Just as you and I are human, so God is human too, except he is spiritually and in his consciousness more advanced than the human races created by him. God and his celestial sons are other human races that have come from the far distances of the universe in their machines made of metal. Creation alone stands immeasurably higher than God and his celestial sons, who are the guardian angels. Alone, creation is the incalculable secret, and begets life, and thus stands immeasurably higher above God and all life. Understand the truth of this teaching, so that you may attain knowledge and wisdom in truth. Then Caiaphas the high priest tore his clothes and spoke furiously. He blasphemed God, the Creator. Why should we need further testimony against him? Behold, now you yourselves have heard his blasphemy. What punishment do you think he deserves? They answered, he deserved death. They beat him with their fists and spat into his face. Some of them hit him from the back and said, Prophesy, you great king of wisdom and son of a celestial son. Who is it that is beating you? Peter had followed Emmanuel and the group and hid among the people, who looked through the doors and windows. Thus he saw what was done to Emmanuel. Then a maid came up to him and said, Aren't you one of the scribes of this Emmanuel from Galilee? Skipping further in chapter 29, suicide of Juda Ihariot. Juda Ihariot, the betrayer of Emmanuel, was among the counselors who wanted to kill Emmanuel. But when he saw what bad injustice and torture were done to Emmanuel, and that his face was bleeding, he felt remorse and great